and those corpses were still on ground for us to carry out tests.
80%. Remember, there's still 20.
What Nigeria today, that the unceremonious removal of Emir Sanusi could be the reason why the Allah and the land
that has nothing to do with this. Oh no!
That's the rumor the people are flying.
Oh no! Please don't even start that.
We are doing the autopsy.
Please. No wonder you want discussion we're having.
They should appease the gods equally. Why they are making their
They don't have gods to appease.
When they removed his grandfather, was there any attack?
I don't know. Oh please. All right, let's move away from that. COVID-19 and federal government targets October. The federal government wants to conclude the process for the implementation stay at the weekend while shedding light on a recent interview by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, with a national television station. Presidential Committee on Restructuring and Rationalization of the Federal Government, Parastatals, Commissions and Agencies had submitted its report in 2012, during which the former President Goodluck Jonathan administration, better known as the Orosanya report, the 660-page report had recommended a consolidating sum and outright scrapping of about 102 set up in 20.
The 2014 National Conference report. We have several reports on the shelf. So if the presidency have started dozen reports for implementation, they should also visit others. And in that particular Orosanya report they are talking about now, they are trying to merge or even scrap the Federal Safety Corps. I think they should let that corps to remain.
That's a different thing entirely, a different agenda. Do you think good to have you here, sir?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, I can see you're COVID ready, but let's get your thoughts.
We have to confine ourselves with the instruction of government.
Indeed.
It's a presidential instruction. No?
Yes.
That's what you said, government.
Yes, government.
All right, then what's your thoughts here? October deadline.
Yeah, it's a good news if they are very really sure that they are going to implement, not just lip services. I remember one of the most important and one of the most comprehensive reports. I think electoral reform by
Wise.
Yeah.
Wise Commission.
Yes, that report was dumped since Yaradua's administration to date. So just like Evanfe said, if they are beginning to reason and remember that those committees, reports are very important to Nigeria and Nigerians, so be it. But I believe it will not still be a lip service.
All right. Okay. Let's also move on to another story here. And this has a caption: Osibanja Committee asks EAC for input into reports. The Economic Sustainability Committee, chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, has asked the Presidential Economic Advisory Council for input into its report on how best to approach the current economic challenges facing the country. It was gathered that the development followed a teleconference meeting held last Thursday between the committee and President Muhammadu Buhari's Economic Advisory Council to harmonize positions on various aspects of the former's recommendations before submitting its final report to the president. It was learned that during the teleconference, the Presidential Advisory Team was provided with copies of reports of various subcommittees of the committee on proposals being made to fortify the economy and create more jobs. This day gathered that the Presidential Advisory Council is expected to revert to a Osibanja committee next week. The two economic teams had earlier had their first interactive meeting where both sides highlighted their concerns and observations. A member of the Presidential Advisory Council told This Day at the weekend that the Osibanja committee also gave some of the reports of its subcommittees to the Presidential Advisory members for their perusal and input. Well, this used to be, I think Osibanja at one point used to chair the economic, but
advisory council for the president.
But now,
but you also know that of them, it should be men of eminent qualities along the line of economics and all that. So if they will do what they are saying, they are collaborating, and eventually they come up with some steps that are very concrete, that'll be nice for Nigeria.
All right. What did you mean?
Yeah, and I think good enough today. I was able to peep through my YouTube and I saw what the Republic of an African country, Madagascar, just is coming out with a hub, and we are seeing some African countries, ECOWAS community, keen into that hub, and they are paying some huge amount of money that is unannounced. And so far, America have been able to fund them with $2.5 million. So these are the ideas that should come up with that economic collaboration, not just sitting down to come up. We are very good on papers. Let them be able to actualize it. What we need now is pragmatic steps, because of course the era of this pandemic will go extinct by His grace, and then we think that not just planning post-COVID economic plan, we should equally have, right now start, thinking on what to do and how we can better the economy, because recently we are almost at the verge of collapsing. Nigeria economy is collapsing gradually because we are borrowing and equally not consuming and equally not producing. So let them sit down. We have the likes of Soludo. I don't know what they are doing there. And the Rwanis, I've not seen anything that they are doing.
Well, they've got to compile reports. I guess that's what's going on.
Yeah, and they even are they writing dictionary? Let them come up with something that is tangible.
All right, got your thoughts on that.
Well,
Fine face to the men. I have seen several pictures of him on this. In fact, when I saw teleconference, I said, that's the VP. The VP has done numerous teleconferences in the past.
Anyway, let's see how that goes. So it's a welcome to the COVID-19.
All right. Chief Loveday.
VP's committee collaborating with, thank God that he was negative at the time. Not even the VP alone. Most of our ministers are not hard in recent time, including the national chairman of APC. Though recently he featured in one of these
and he has
grown bears, coming out from wherever
he was.
He was. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why the rest of you didn't catch up with with him doing what he was doing. He has always been having teleconferences.
So the collaboration is working. So let it yield a good result economically that will have impact on the economy of Nigeria.
All
so
right,
we're expecting that.
All right, let's move on. Let's leave the VP alone. And we have here Edo PDP demands arrest and quarantine of Oshomole's loyalists over political gathering. Edo Progressive Movement, a faction of the All Progressive Congress loyal to the national chairman of the party, Mr. Adams Oshomole, came under criticisms at the weekend for organizing a mock governorship primary election last. Mr. Cruz Osage and the Commissioner for Communication and Orientation, Honorable Paul Ohambomu, accused Oshomole of serial violations of directives to halt the spread of COVID.
Put everything together. There's also an order, even maybe state and federal, that for lockdown.
You've already violated.
That's what I'm saying. Assuming there are reasons in terms of even observation and perhaps anti-observation of the norms and caprices of what is it called, lockdown, then they can be arrested as they are telling the Inspector General. But if they maintain what should happen, there's no doubt that I'm not sure this COVID will stop election. I'm not sure.
It might, because there were places where they should have had some polls run that INEC had to suspend because of COVID.
If they stop election, that means Obaseki perhaps will extend his relative in Edo, and you also know what crisis it will brew. So, but whatever be the case, I think election is very crucial. They may organize it in a way that even if 10% or whatever. So that is political antagonism from Obaseki's camp. I think this is the very first time I'm standing for Ojomole's camp.
And I think
if they maintain what they should maintain, there's nothing wrong.
I think this is for me the first time that I'm also going to stand against the
Oshomole's.
yes, because I truly do not understand why it was necessary for them to carry.
In Edo State. Edo State is becoming an autonomous state because gradually this is the doctrine of federal law and state law. But above all, I think the federal law supersedes. At this point, people must understand that we are fighting a pandemic. And this is just a serious thing. People should look at Kano as a litmus test. We are yet to understand what is going on. And it's as a result of this community-to-community transmission. People are not observing anything. So I think with the level of elitism of Obaseki and that of Oshomole, I think these are elites who, within the ambit of politics, understand the do's and don'ts. People should go and I have recommended that at this point of our life, that people are now beginning to stay on their own. They should equally take the copy of Constitution and Bible. They should be able to read and understand what the law is. For God's sake, even as I'm coming now, the drivers are not even, they're undermining what it means to say. Even when you tell them that this thing is, they say, do you want to die? Are you going for surgery? Are you putting on face mask? So I think we must begin to, the law must serve as a deterrent. The likes of Oshomole is not above the law. Who are those that are in that gathering? There was a burial in Kano, the man that just died, the emir. If you look at
Fine face doing the man.
Yeah, I think if people have to gather at this point in time and they are sure they are going to obey the instructions against gathering, they should involve the state's task force on COVID-19. This is what we want to do. This is how important it is. Let us be able to gather. We are going to obey all the rules in terms of sitting arrangement, to have social distancing and physical distancing, whatever they call it, so they can arrange it like that, because the election is coming up on the 19th of September, just few months from now. And I believe that to an extent, what they are playing there is politics, because the governor himself will do the same thing for which he arrested this thing for now, because he also has to do that primaries ahead of the elections. And we also had here in Rivers State 2 weeks ago, when we had the inauguration of the world chairman. The arrangement I saw, I wasn't there, the arrangement I saw on TV, on paper, they sat in a better way. The social distancing was observed. So if they can do so, then they can go ahead, because I do not think that the American election in November will be postponed because of COVID-19 in the United States. So we must put all measures together and be able to carry out those essential things that we need to do without putting in politics in such a way that we victimize our opponent because they are not in our party or they are not in our own side, and they should not do what they need to do.
All right. Okay. What are your thoughts there? Chief Loveday.
Yeah, Annie, I'm sure when you read that particular piece from that is happening in the Edo State, somebody, one of our listeners, if not up to 100, must have shouted Oshomole again. I'm sure something like that must have happened. You see, I said I had him on channels about 7 days ago. All this while there have been peace both in Edo and everywhere. Just now that he has surfaced, he has come to start creating problems again. I'm not sure that there is anywhere that is contained in INEC program where there is something like a mock primaries. It's not included in mock in that. In fact, people are trying to shrink the activities now to enable them, go straight to whatever, to avoid too much contact and spreading of this thing, this COVID-19. In the north, some months back when we were here, we heard that they said they were not going to lock down for any reason. They are going to continue to operate. Today, what is happening? They have lost 2 emirs, one from Kanu.
Remember that the reason why they said they weren't locking down was because they said they're predominantly farmers and they have to.
That's what I'm saying now. Whichever excuse you are giving when there is a pandemic.
But after that, you've seen that they did say that when these cases started to emerge, they have been shutting down activities.
Exactly what you're saying is what I'm saying. I'm saying that whatever reason you may have to undermine pandemics such as COVID-19, when the results begin to come in, stand to bear it too. In Edo State, I'm sure that Edo is one of the states that has high number of infected persons. And Oshomole is undermining such thing because he wants to flex muscles with the state governor. For goodness sake, he is even supposed to collaborate with the state governor to see how they can move the state forward. 2 or 3 days ago, I saw the Minister for State on Petroleum,
Jimmy Principal
in Bayelsa State. I saw him with the governor in government house discussing on how to move the state forward. These are the things that I expected. So Oshomole should stop with this kind of thing. These are the things that led him, all these series of cases that made him today. One of my friends said he's state of execution chairman for now. So all these kind of things should be stopped.
Okay, let's move on. Let's leave the state of execution chairman to another story in this day newspaper. Again, Tinubu seeks interest rate reduction. Tinubu yesterday reiterated his call for the Apex Bank to slash interest rates so as to stimulate activities. Tinubu, in a paper he wrote, the case against high interest rates in time of contagion and obtained yesterday, said keeping interest rates high would remain a fundamental drag on economic growth. He explained that lower rates will spur domestic investment and production, which will result in jobs. However, noted that lower rates and consumer borrowing. Manuel, your thoughts?
Because if the interest rate is relaxed or that's reduced, Tinubu is not going to benefit alone. So I think the Apex Bank certainly must have their reason for pegging it at that and leaving it. I think they should also be, through the economic, council or whatever they do, they should find out why it should be reduced. Because like Tinubu said, if it's reduced, it will spur on domestic production.
There might be short-term disadvantages, but he says in the long
Of
run,
course,
but
people
implementing
can
is a
accept
different thing
or
entirely.
reject.
Got your thoughts there?
Has been violent from one point to another. The last time I checked, it was with Bullion Van, causing trouble. So I think we should look at
How
it.
was he causing trouble with Bullion Van? Bullion Van moved into his
Did he
house.
break the
I don't
bullion van
know.
on the road?
How did he cause trouble?
We saw what happened during the election, but that I think what we should be looking at is how he may have been advised by economic team. They should look at what he has advised, because I'm not an economist, but so far, whatever that will lead to the success of this nation should be adhered strictly to. And when you look at what he's saying, Tinubu has been in the corridor of governance. He understands, the positivities of governance. So I think that those we have as economic team who are superlative in thinking should equally look at it on how they can, look into this advice and key into it, and look at the short time and long time advantages. Because most times when we go into most of this advice, sometimes you see us going into verge of extinction. This is when we need an expert knowledge that will dissect whatever opinion that comes now.
All right. Got your thoughts there. Bye, first in a minute.
Yes, I think I buy his idea in that direction. And in addition to what he has recommended, there should be a kind of tax holiday for certain businesses, so that it will help them to come out of what we have now. What we must understand is the fact that although we are in a period of COVID-19 now, and businesses are knowing that there are businesses that are booming now, they are making a lot of money. Those people should continue servicing their debts and then being able to pay their tax, and then go further to assist the people within this period. Then central banks should know what to do so that the economy can pick up again.
22 violators caught hiding under bean sacks. And then you have in Vanguard newspaper, Nigeria records 170 new cases of COVID-19 and 2 fatalities. That's in the Vanguard this morning. There's another story in the Vanguard. I think that has to do with CBN directives. CBN Bankers Committee hold sack of banks workers. CBN Bankers Committee holds sack of banks workers. And then APC hits Atiku, says Obasanjo's administration was short-sighted on economic diversification. APC hits Atiku, says Obasanjo's administration was short-sighted on economic diversification. And then Chidoka says federal character principle, why implementation must begin with commission. Federal Character Commission, why implementation must begin with commission. That is from Chidoka. Cultist on the rampage in Calabar and Sapele. Cultist on the rampage in Calabar and Sapele. Stay at home, Sanwo-Olu tells Lagos civil servants. Stay at home, Sanwo-Olu tells Lagos civil servants. That story is also in the Vanguard newspaper. There is enormous evidence that coronavirus came from Wuhan lab. That's in the Vanguard newspaper. This is the United States position. United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said there is enormous evidence COVID-19 came from Wuhan lab. All right, let's run through some of these stories as quickly as we can. Federal character principle, why implementation must begin with the commission. Chidoka is the one speaking there. It says here, to maintain the federal character principle, the Senate has been urged to reject the nomination of candidates from northern states of Kwara and Taraba as chairman and secretary, respectively, of the Federal Character Commission, FCC. According to the chieftain of Northerners, as chairman and secretary of the FCC, is paying lip service to maintenance of the Fed in the commission that is supposed to drive the process. Chidoka urged the Senate to reject President Muhammadu Buhari's nomination for the chairman and secretary of FCC board nationalistic. In his words, if according to the FCC Act and the 1999 Constitution, the commission is to implement and enforce the federal character principle of fairness and equity in the distribution of public posts and socio-economic infrastructures among the various federating units of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, appointing both chairman and secretary of the FCC board from the north instead of north and south, as it has been before, is a clear foulness of the principle. It's of note that the legal advisor of Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association, Mohammed Tukur, was appointed and still in office as the secretary of the FCC.
Well, for me, I think a Federal Character Commission is the fulcrum of equity in the administration, whichever administration. So if anything, I always say what the law embodies might, what the law does not embody might be offensive to natural sensibility. Now, if you think maybe the Constitution did not say specifically, now the commissions must be from, one said one is from north, one from the south. We are talking about what could bring peace.
But Chinoka even said there's a certain part of the law it violates where it says all positions must be shared equally. And so in the place where you have like just two now, it should be shared between the north and the south.
Yeah, but I don't know that place. Or he is quoting it.
Yeah, and that's what he's quoting.
Experts in the law should check. Perhaps we are waiting for Falana and his likes to react on that. But I tell you, this thing is secretary and chairman. Is it chairman? Good.
Secretary and chairman.
I think north and south should take these two positions. But the president, whose right it is to appoint, may not decide not to listen to that because he may be looking for specific clause in the Constitution that goes against what he has done.
All right. What did you mean?
I think it's really an apostasy within the constituent of the letters of the Constitution and what we all believe from our different constituents. The Federal Character Principle, it's clearly stated. The reason is that over time, if you look at the archives of leadership in this country, you will see that it is not just something that is, breeded in this administration. It has been there from time immemorial.
As tradition.
Yes, as tradition. And I think that if you look at the principle of consanguinity, which states that whoever the cap fits should wear it, it has always been there. Because one thing I believe is that over time, if you look at the leadership of Jonathan administration, look at Obasanjo, you will see that it is they just pick whoever they feel can run it. And one thing I believe is that we must begin to look at what the Constitution says. So we must evenly distribute, even in the economic distribution of most appointments, you will see that there is lopsidedness. Nepotism becomes a front burner. So at this point, I wouldn't say that we've not been marrying this process. Over time, it has become part of Nigerian leadership legacy. So what we will only do is that Chidoka has spoken very well. Yes, on paper. If he's there too, he will do same. So, but what we are saying is that let us learn how to evenly distribute these things. And that is where the issue of marginalization comes in. Whether you like it or not, the war that, heralded the Nigerian Civil War, part of it was marginalization. And I think that these issues must be addressed. And that is why we keep saying we want to implement report. We want to implement report.
Because
let us begin to restructure our mind.
Thank you so much. Fine face,
I think what will unite this country and we continue.
Laws have been undermined as a result of the fact that individuals in this country are bigger than it. Every part of the country is given a
of the economy. He shouldn't be crucified for that, because the fact remains that he might have learned better now. I don't think it's something that is very much to be celebrated. That we should be talking about. We know that yes, it should be diversified. Economy should be diversified. Yet we didn't do it. So are we saying that we should keep on everyone that comes in not diversified, even though we have the knowledge? For me, Atiku has given a good advice. If President Buhari had come in, he promised the diversification of Nigeria because of oil.
Well, they did say this is what he reeled out as part of what they have done to diversify. This is the party is really not what it described as the successes of the current administration. And as far back as 2016, President Buhari launched the Anchor Burrows Program, ABP, an intervention policy primarily aimed at giving farmers access to finance, which entails the provision of credit for financing the production of rice, wheat, ginger, maize, and soya beans in many states of the Federation. The statement added that this policy, driven by the Central Bank of Nigeria, is an initiative that has, in the last 4 years, provided hundreds of billions of naira for rice farming, cultivation, and milling. Few years down the line, Nigeria is now rated the highest producer of rice in Africa, producing over 7 million tons per annum. Just late last year, the APC-led government, through the CBN, has also made available huge funds to our cotton farmers, a move geared towards reviving our moribund textile factories, thereby creating millions of direct and indirect jobs, all recorded in local production of fertilizer. This one policy, personally driven by the president, which has received applause from even his most virulent critics. This policy, which is built on the partnership between Nigeria and the Kingdom of Morocco, has led to the resuscitation of 11 blending plants producing about 1.3 million tons of fertilizer, creating over 50,000 direct and 150,000 indirect jobs, in addition to farmers having timely access to the product at an affordable price. So they're saying this is part of it.
If we allow the present administration, the gains on diversification can never be exhausted. There is nobody that is saying they've not done anything towards that. But they are talking about, even as Atiku is advising, for them to do more.
All right. What did you mean?
And I hate political penitency. The reason is that Atiku was on that same echelon. But like I said, I would always say that we shouldn't just kill the messenger. And, we should take the message and jettison the messenger. The reason is that at this time, we are seeing the spirit of penitency enveloping most of our past leaders. Now, what we should be looking at is the advice timeless. It is timeless. I think a lot of promises were made under this administration. Now, like what you said, most of the industries were moribund, especially from the agricultural sector. Now, under this administration, we have seen that, gradually there is agricultural industrialization coming in. But when you just oppose what is going on now with this pandemic, and you and I will come to realize that there is a time we must agree with that. You can't compete the foreign rice with that of the foreign local rice. We are seeing a lot of competition, and we saw the issue of inflation, where Nigerians cannot even buy rice. So I think where there is surplus of rice, just as the writer have written there so far, because it is under the administration, of course, the principle of ministerial responsibility will not allow them to criticize the sincerity. But if you look at what is going on, you and I, some of us can't even afford rice. Even as this pandemic is going on, there are areas that have not tested rice since January. So I think there are a lot of lapses, even though they are agreeing, they are accepting that they have done so much well in diversification. But I think this administration is still short-sighted in terms of diversification.
Got your thoughts there. And fine face in a minute.
That is what we need to do. We shouldn't castigate Atiku if he has that idea. I believe that this administration has really tried and attempted diversifying the economy.
Yes.
If Nigeria was still focused on importing rice and we have this pandemic, now it would have been more challenging for this country. But they try to, have local rice that is helping, even if it's more expensive than the one we were importing. But whatever.
But all the rice they've been sharing is all local rice.
It's all local rice, so it's a good thing. Not what Atiku is saying shouldn't just be focused on the federal government. The state government can as well diversify their local economy. I have advised here in to go beyond sharing food that can go around, and reviving the fish farm of River State government will go a long way to help us in this.
All right then. And finally, Lofty.
Yeah, I think let me thank Atiku for coming up with this kind of advice at this point in time. I think it's haunting them. Their consciences are haunting them, including the ones in power today. They know that most of the things they are doing in this country is very, very bad. So I thank God that it's beginning to make some of them have change of mind.
Yeah.
But there is one fundamental issue here. As we talk about diversification, we should begin to think about the foundation that should be laid for states and the nation to diversify. There must be enabling environment. People are talking about state policing. If there is insecurity everywhere, there's no way people can go to farm, to produce food. So we must think of how to make our environment safe, our community safe, to enable farmers to go to farm. This state policing should be considered so that we can have a good security in our environment.
All right, Chief Lofty, thank you so much. We'll be joining the news desk now for the news updates. Stay with us.
Every day, every hour, when the big stories break, depend on our 24-hour news team to bring you the latest. Today, 95.1 FM.
Today, 95.1 FM. Port Harcourt. News update.
Hello and good morning. Here's the news update on Today 95.1 FM. I am Annie Abdul Salam. The Rivers State government has said it is doing its best to avert community transmission of COVID-19 in the state. State Commissioner for Health, Professor Prince Chike, said this while inaugurating the 14-man committee set up to accredit isolation and treatment centers for coronavirus in Port Harcourt. Professor Chike said since community transmission of COVID-19 have been recorded in Lagos and Abuja, Rivers State is bracing up for the eventuality. On the 14-man committee, the Commissioner for Health said its role is to search and recommend facilities that can be converted into isolation centers when the state runs out of bed spaces. Rivers State government has announced the total closure of Slaughter Market at Transamadi area of Port Harcourt. This was contained in a statement by the Commissioner for Information and Communications in the state, Paulinus Interim. The Rivers State government stressed that anyone caught flouting the directive will be decisively dealt with. Paulinus Interim said that the closure of the Slaughter Market takes immediate effect. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the appointment of Sunday Thomas as a substantive Commissioner for Insurance, Chief Executive Officer, National Insurance Commission. The announcement was made by Yunus Abdullahi, Special Advisor to the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed. Thomas replaced the immediate past Commissioner for Insurance CEO, Muhammad Kari, as Acting Commissioner for Insurance CEO of the National Insurance Commission in July 2019. The statement said Thomas, who had over 3 decades of experience in the industry association in 2010. On the foreign scene, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has said mosques will reopen across large parts of the country after they were closed in early administrative divisions would reopen their mosques today. The Iranian president, in a meeting with the committee, said the targeted counties are low-risk locations, adding that the committee was also milling reopening schools by May 16 to allow for a month of classes before the summer break. Also, churches in Germany can now open their doors again to worshippers, but services will be very different. That was the news update here on Today 95.1 FM. Do not forget to...
Today is here. Beautiful truth is that today is pregnant with is great. Today is one build on yourself and get ready for the opportunity. Be the best you can be today, because I see the sun smiling on you. This message is powered by Today
95.1 FM.
Voice of the people.
Talk radio. I listen to a lot of talk radio.
95.1 FM.
Wake up to today's quest.
Wake up.
All the news and information you need in one go. Get started with the best of sports. Can you feel it? Wake up to today's quest with Annie on Today 95.1 FM from 6 to 11 a.m. weekdays. Fantastic.
Exactly 10 minutes gone past 9, and you are listening to Today 95.1 FM, Voice of the People. We're moving into opinion poll segment, and for opinion poll, we're looking at 2 stories. We'll be looking at the Orasanya Commission, report and its implementation. We might look at that in a bit, but we're also looking at CBN Bankers Committee hold sack of bank workers or banks workers. It says here that the Central Bank of Nigeria has halted layoffs by banks. The Apex Bank said in a statement on Sunday evening that the decision was taken after a special meeting of the Bankers Committee. According to the statement by the Director of Corporate Communications, Mr. Isaac Okorafor, no sack of either permanently or ad hoc staff can be carried out by any bank without the approval of the regulator. The statement reads in full: a special meeting of the Bankers Committee was convened on March 2nd, 2020 to further review the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Nigerian banking industry. The committee particularly deliberated on the issue of the operating costs of banks in view of the disruptions emanating from the global economic difficulties and decided as follows. In order to help minimize and mitigate the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic on families and livelihoods, no bank in Nigeria will retrench or lay off any staff of any cadre, including full-time and part-time. To give effect to the above measure, the express approval of the Central Bank of Nigeria shall be required in the event that it becomes absolutely necessary to lay off any such staff. The Central Bank of Nigeria solicits the support of all in our collective effort to weather through the economic challenge occasioned by the COVID-19. It has been in the news recently of a major bank, Access Bank, laying off close to 75% their staff. And in a broadcast made by the chairman, he explained why these reasons had to be. And quite a number of people have said one of the things that the pandemic has brought to light is the duplication of several other jobs. With the sit-at-home order, where it was said only people of essential services or of utmost importance must be at their various jobs, they found out that we don't need certain people, or we found out that you're actually duplicating a job one person was doing. I guess they perhaps they're looking at what the job description actually is and how many people they perhaps need in each department. And with that, let's not forget that Access Bank recently bought over Diamond Bank. And so they do have a handful for themselves. So I don't know whether that's what spurred this meeting between Central Bank and the Committee of Bankers, bank committees. But in any which ways, this is the position they've taken. You must get the express note from CBN before you're able to fire, retrench, lay off, or whatever it is you want to call it, any staff of any cadre within the banking industry. My question here now is, if I genuinely notice that I have duplication of jobs, or I notice that I can't afford to keep you here any longer, what happens? Is that not being too restrictive?
No, it might seem so, because, but you also must consider that it seems to be a very important key sector. And the law, maybe unfortunately for the banking sector, I must give a nod. So, because I don't understand what it means that I am finding out that I have enough, and this enough is even maybe duplicating the duties, and I can make do with 5. And I lay off, you are telling me no, it must be by my nod. And now the CBN has also seen the difficulty at this time, what people are going to do. And you know, honey, what people are laid off now, where are you laying them off to? Where are they going to be? What will they just benefit? So the thing is very crucial that the CBN is coming out to say, no, we won't do that now. Perhaps much later in future, such could be done. But for now, already people that have enough.
But we agreed that the economic situation has constrained so many businesses. The banking sector will also have to deal with that.
That's very correct.
So how do you force them to perhaps continue paying when they can't afford to do so now too? Because other companies are laying off. It's happening everywhere.
Yes. That is why I said, unfortunately for the banking sector, the situation is what it is. The CBN has a law covering that and then restraining them from sacking people. But fortunately for other sectors, they've been laying off. You remember when the issue started, we were talking about this operate from home and all the rest of them. From home, you remain at home. And it's happening in many sectors. But this particular one is where the CBN has its hammer on. And he's saying you won't sack in that fashion. And I want to believe that it's because of the prevailing circumstance of difficulty that is making the CBN maybe have a human face of saying, no, don't let them off. But like I said, it won't endure so long because CBN won't be giving the grants to banks and all that. And you rightly mentioned Access Bank. But remember again, if you acquire any organization, you acquire both liability and asset. Now, am I to believe that they just acquired the Diamond Bank and perhaps using some assets and then the liabilities go? And for me, that won't be a nice one. Let them wait a little. 75%. Do you understand? Who are there now? Who are there? Perhaps only those who have long legs and roots are remaining there. So, for me, I think the CBN has intervened in a way that they should receive accolade. Maybe much later, they can go ahead with whatever they plan.
All right, then. Okay, what are your thoughts on that, Emmanuel? What did you mean?
Let us not be quick to bask into the furor of, should I say, happiness or whatsoever. There is going to be a very big industrial disharmony. Because under the industrial law, I'm sure before the appointer or the appointee does whatever he wants to do under the banking sector, the banking sector is a very big institution where you have the legal services, you have the marketers, you have the thinkers, you have the promoters. I'm sure before somebody is being employed as a banker, the issue of duplication should be considered. Now, if you're employing me as a marketer, you should be able to know how many persons that are running a bank or how many employees that are coming in or employers. Now, what I'm considering is that, is it that at the time of sending an employment letter, all these things were not considered? Now, the issue of establishing the fact that, where does this mistake lies? Because you don't just start employing people on one particular thing. You begin to consider. I'm sure there are institutions that are starting.
But again, what if I had a boom? I had extra money. I was making a lot of gains, and I felt okay. Hire here, hire there, hire everywhere. Now that I'm not making enough to keep all those people.
Now,
and because I'm very sure that when they were hiring, everybody was jumping at that opportunity too.
Yeah, that is why for there to be industrial harmony under the CBM law and the BOFA law, the law provides that the relationship between the banker or the employer or the regulator, but industrial court will frown at most of the excessiveness of the CBN and the actions that are emanating from the banker customer relationship or banker employee relationship. Now let us begin to consider the processes of employment. That they consider the dark days of days like this, where it may not be futuristic to consider the number of persons.
Yeah.
What are to be provided? What are the provisions that will be made for, discarding this number of bankers? You don't just begin to disemploy people simply because you're running into deficit. This is the time to even create other incentive for your workers. So I think that there will be industrial disharmony because one, being an institution, the law provides that they don't just sack. That the bank equally has a restriction. They equally have the right to be restricted not to just fire people unnecessarily at a time like this. Because I know that in some areas in South Africa, where some farmers were asked not to work again, they were farming for state government of the federal government. Cyril Ramaphosa had to issue a command that they should let go. But they were given incentive because under the law that regulates farmers' relationship, they were given incentive because the law frowns at it. So I think that the issue of looking at how they can create incentive for these workers that will be disemployed, they have to create that incentive because the workers equally have the right to go to industrial court for reconciliation. And let me correct one impression. The CBN may be the regulator. But remember, the bank equally have a right to challenge the regulators. Because one, if I don't have money to pay, what is the role of the CBN? So I think that there must be an industrial harmonization in terms of our law. Even because there is always a right to even fire. There is a right to hire under the BOFA law. So I think that not just saying nobody should fire. Has there been incentive of the regulators commanding or mandating the bank not to just let them go? But these are the incentives you will give. Because I tell you, as time goes on, the bank will still fire them. The letters have been issued to them. From what I read from Access Bank, some of the branches may be winding up because there was a loan that was given under this pandemic without the consent of the directors. So I think that it is an anomaly from the initials. The bank would have, while you're employing, you consider the issue of duplication of duty. You equally consider the issue of decency in corporation. You equally consider the incentive created to these workers, because I'm sure most of these bankers are living under life insurance or assurance. So I think that they don't just disemploy simply because there is a pandemic. As I speak to you, in Uganda, there is an insurance covering journalists. In so many places in Africa, there are incentives given to these given to workers. You don't just tell them to go. So I think where I only frown is that let them harmonize the issue of not just regulating. Let them harmonize the issue of employer-employees, relationship. You don't just fire them, but don't say you're regulating.
All right.
What are the issues to guide those regulators? What are the incentives created when you disemploy those people from not working again? So I think that there may be flawed cases of industrial cases of reconciling the issues, because there is a right of those people that are employed to go to court. So I think that not just CBN giving them assurance that nobody should fire, because he that hires must fire. The BOFA empowers the bank directors to fire. So I think that there is no confidence as to, that will make those employers to be insured, because if they are disemployed or given letter of sack, I don't think CBN will do anything.
All right. What are your thoughts on that? Fine, first of Nomino.
Yes, I think I read, and as you've also said, I've looked at that requirement by the Central Bank of Nigeria for banks not to fire their employees, whether temporary staff or permanent staff. Well, basically, it has been a norm in Nigeria that a lot of institutions will use a kind of flimsy excuses or a little thing to lay off workers. And in this case, I believe the central bank as a regulator is trying to forestall the arbitrary sack of some staff because of the pandemic that we are still studying to see how far it will take us to do. And if that their meeting is held, Nigeria must try as much as they can to give the bank certain support that will enable them to keep these workers in place. Because now in the banks, you have some people who go for more, they stop by 1:30, be able to flow. Because if you are asking them to keep their workers at this point in time, without touching any of them, it means it's going to reduce the income who have shares in those banks, supporting